Hi, hello, and welcome back to a podcast where I talk about going from corporate drone to corporate dropout and everything in between. You know it, you love it. Welcome back to Chaos and Fuckery. And today we have a little friend. If you notice my arms, well, she might be going now. I have 3 little kittens, for those who don't know, and one likes to be a needy baby, and she likes to be in my lap at all times. I usually have to lock her out when I'm recording or when I'm doing videos or things like that, but I've decided lately to just let it be. Let the cats come in when I stream. Let the cats be here when I record, because honestly, that's a part of my chaos. I love these little gremlins so much. These little gremlins, and I don't need these on my head. Why do I have my headphones on my head? I don't need them. These little gremlins, specifically, all gremlins, but these 3 are my... She's like mad at me because I put her up in the camera. They are my babies, and they are basically my children, and I'm gonna let them be a part of the chaos. You know, if I start traveling in the future with that RV that I've talked about on this podcast before, they're coming with me. They're my babies, and you know, I can't hide them from the world, and I shouldn't hide them from the world. I don't want to hide them from the world. They're cute and adorable, and they don't, you know, need privacy like actual children. I can share my cats on the internet and no one's gonna be weird about it. I mean, people might be weird about it, but that's none of my business if be weird about it. But today, part of, letting them be here is dealing with today's topic. As a business owner, burnout, similar to some other things that I've talked about on this podcast, ADHD burnout can absolutely wreck you. I get it a lot, and I get it pretty quick. And that's alluding to kind of the topic that I talked about last week, where, I hate everything and I want to change everything every 2 to 3 years. Part of that's burnout. Part of the reason I get that is because I burn out. I am in a phase right now where I have zero clue what I want to do for content. And every time I try to spark some sort of joy, and I'm like, hey, give me some ideas for short form content. Give me some ideas for long form content. I don't like any of it. And I know I talked about that last week, but the burnout is very, very real. And I am going to talk a little bit about how I get through my burnout. And this may not work for everybody, and it may work for absolutely no one other than me. But over the last few years, I've discovered that if I don't try to work through it and almost against it, working with it means I crash out in bed rot. And then I end up in a pretty bad depressive phase too. And I don't want that. My burnout is a crash out. My burnout is I want to do nothing, and I might, lose everything around me and, live in a pigsty for a few months because I don't have the energy to do literally anything because I'm so overwhelmed by everything. And I have taken, the last 3 years of trying to run a business and work a 9 to 5 at the same time and everything else that comes with all of that to try to figure out my signs of burnout as a business owner so that I can counteract that in the future, but also my, remedies, if you will. So let's start with the signs. What are signs of burnout for me? And if you also struggle with this, talk about your signs, talk about your solutions in the comments below, because I would like to know what other people do when they're dealing with ADHD burnout. Because I not only was late diagnosed and didn't realize what it was for most of my life. It took me, 3 or 4 years, and yeah, I probably could have done it quicker working with a professional and everything else, but I have to learn things the hard way and do things myself. If someone else tells me to do it, my demand avoidance is going to tell you absolutely fuck no, even if it's the right thing for me. It has to be me, the one that, it has to be my idea, essentially. So let's talk about my symptoms, my signs of burnout. I start avoiding doing things that I previously enjoyed. So for instance, right now, I have scripts ready to go, and I even have some B-roll ready for 2 or 3 videos. I don't want to record my intros and outros to put all of those together. I started to edit. I have, I think close to 15 hours of footage of DK Bonanza. I've edited down to 4.5 hours from close to 6 on one day of that footage. I still have to go through it and actually cut it down and kind of decide how I want that script to go. Because the last time I tried to edit that much footage, which was my Super Mario Odyssey video, the end result was wacky. It did well, relatively, but it was still a very wacky video. And if this is going to be the first video I put out other than shorts on my new gaming channel, I want to make sure that it says Finish gamer, right? With this whole rebrand. So that's the number one sign to me that I am, I'm avoiding things that I typically enjoy doing to do things that I hate doing, right? I've been avoiding filming and creating content and being a creative just in general to do stuff for my 9 to 5 or to clean my house or to put away laundry, just purely because those are simple things I can do that don't require a lot of my brain power because I'm about to burn out and I don't want to use a lot of my brain power. The other thing is I have an inability to stick to a plan lately. I am very spontaneous. I am very, let's put a little spark in my life. That's because I'm about to burn out. I want to do everything that isn't what I'm supposed to be doing so that I can try to avoid that burnout. And I have noticed that the summer, and it's the 1st of August that I'm recording this. To me, summer is officially over. This is usually when I'm putting, Halloween decorations up around my house. I have stalled my typical summer crash out way further than I've ever been able to in the past. This is the furthest I've made it because usually I am begging for signs on the internet to say it's socially acceptable to put up all my Halloween decorations so that I can have fun because I'm crashing out and burning out like I typically do in the summer. I did not take, and I think the reason I was able to kind of, push it off is because I took my vacation later in the year than I typically do. And that helps, but it's not the answer. If I was truly going to avoid burnout, I would take a week, a month off from my 9 to 5. I would only work 3 weeks a year, or not. Only working 3 weeks a year sounds like a dream. No, I would only work 3 weeks a month at the 9 to 5 so that I had a week to film all the content, plan all the content, do everything I needed to do so that it just goes up and I can only handle my clients. Because if all I had to do was handle my clients and not have to do the lead gen side of my business, I would be okay while working my 9 to 5. But the lead gen side takes so much out of me that I burn out. And a lot of my mentoring group is like, make it, like, do this, do that, do that. The industry's changing. You don't have to do edited content. But that's the problem. I like the edited content. I like long form content. I like streaming. I like those things. Just too much of it while everything else in my life is going on causes me to burn out. Because at the end of the day, right, I would hire an editor for my gaming videos. I would still edit my fitness videos. My gaming videos, the real big issue with them is it's 16 plus hours worth of footage that I have to eventually go through and cut down. And I don't know, maybe I don't hire an editor. Maybe I do my gaming videos and I don't know what that looks like in a world where I can hire an editor. I would love to just see, an editor do something with my content. Because I think that would also help me come up with, potential for me as well. And that's also part of the burnout. I burn out. Signs for me is if my analytics aren't doing good, I need to jump off. If I am not doing as well as I think I should be, I'm going to crash out soon. And that's not because, I'm blaming the audiences or anything like that. It's just my brain tells me I'm not good enough and that I need to just stop. And that will cause me to burn out because I'm so overwhelmed with trying to fix it that I have to let it go. So I've talked a little bit about my signs, right? I'm sleeping more. That's another sign of mine is I start to, even if I can go to bed later, but I still sleep more than I should. Say I go to bed at 1 a.m., I'm still sleeping till like 9 or 10, which is more sleep than I typically get. And that is also typically a sign that I'm about to fully burn out. Now that I know my signs, what have I done about it, right? And like I said at the beginning of this podcast, everybody is different. I absolutely would not recommend some of the things that I do to avoid burnout or deal with my burnout to anybody. Because I am chaos and for lack of a better way of putting it, I will do anything to be successful at this point, and I will push through any and all mental health issues that I may see arising amongst all of this just to say I'm fine, I'm successful, I'm gonna make this work. I'm delusional in some ways because that is how desperate I am to not be in corporate world anymore. I am so tired of the politics of being a corporate drone that it is weighing on me. It is weighing on my relationship. It is weighing on just life in general. I want to do more content. I want to do more parks content. I want to do more like nerd content, like conventions and things like that. I want to travel more, and I can't do that as a corporate drone. So when I say the things that I am doing now to avoid burnout, don't listen to me as advice. This is a me thing. This is what I'm doing. So the number one thing I do is force myself to just do the bare minimum. Bare minimum around my house, bare minimum, with content. I've been doing TikToks and trying to put up at least 1 or 2 shorts a week on the different channels. And, for long form, this is my bare minimum. I record this podcast. It is minimal editing at the moment until I start really, thinking through how I build this, how I build, guests being on this podcast and things like that. I force myself to do the bare minimum necessities. That's just how I avoid crashing out. And it is a forced. I'm not even saying it is literally drag myself out of bed, get dressed, force myself to sit in front of my computer so that eventually I hit the record button. And is it healthy? Probably not, but it gets work done. The next thing I do is I take a day or several days to just go be a lizard. I live in Florida, so the summer right now is kind of miserable to be out in the sun all day and doing, I really would like to go weed my flower beds and kind of do some outdoor work that have nothing to do with my business or my 9 to 5. But it's hot as shit. So doing that is not really an option right now. That's something I'll do as it starts to cool off. Cool off is relative in the state of Florida, but at least it won't be swamp ass hot. So, I will utilize some of the perks of my Universal Pass and go over there after 4 to go ride some rides with Express, or I will go see a movie. And seeing a movie is not being a lizard, but it gets me out of my house. That's the one thing I do to motivate myself to, even if it's just simply going for a quick grocery trip to go get witch's brew, which I will be doing after I record these episodes, because it's Halloween season officially. Yes, we are here. It's August 1st. It's Halloween season. Horror Nights is, as of the day of recording this, 27 days away from me. It's Halloween season. I'm out of even the month time frame. But that's one thing I will do. I will go do something out of my house, even though it's not productive for my business to go do that, usually, unless I'm recording content. But usually if I am facing burnout, there's no way I'm getting out, the mic. There's no way I'm getting out the gimbal. All of that goes out the window if I am just simply trying to survive. So getting out and doing something that is out of my normal routine, grocery shopping, going to the movies, going to the theme parks, things that, are spontaneous and on a whim and not very structured and rigid and creating content and, talking to people online and, building the business, if you will. That's the number one thing I think for me that I do, aside from, forcing myself to do the bare minimum, because I haven't always been able to force myself to do the bare minimum. And right now, the bare minimum doesn't even really look like I own a business. The bare minimum is checking in on my clients and keeping my house clean and doing my 10 hours a day for work. From a 9 to 5 and struggling and maybe picking up some B-roll content here and there, because I did record some B-roll content for future videos, but I couldn't even convince myself on Monday because I was so tired this week to start recording this week in the life of a certain thing type of video, just because I didn't have the energy to do it. And that's where I'm at right now. I don't have the energy. I am feeling myself coming out of it because I am inspired by content again. I just don't know what I want to talk about. Even when I went to record this episode today, and I think that was kind of what led me to this topic, is I sat and stared at the wall. I was like, what do I even want to talk about? Right? Running a business is a lot of routine, and there's not always crazy things that happen in my life. A lot of the times there is a lot of chaos and a lot of fuckery. I mean, just last night, if we're talking about my personal life, just last night, my husband, has been surrounded by people that have COVID and had to go on a work trip, found out everybody had COVID, wasn't allowed to go do the thing he was traveling for, came home with everybody, got a text that said, hey, we really need to actually go do that thing that we didn't do, and turned around and got back on the road. And then also found out he has COVID. So I will be spending a lot of time in my office this weekend. We talked about the Kaizen challenge, and I was supposed to be giving updates to that. I don't feel very motivated to be better. I simply am just existing currently. And that is a sign of burnout for me. I'm burnt. I'm burnt. I didn't avoid it. I'm kind of currently living in it. So I'm trying to do everything I can to counteract what I typically would do when I'm fully burnt. And will that lead to future burns? Yes, but it might make my burnout length shorter if I just kind of push through it and keep going at bare minimum. I have talked about anything and anything just simply to put content out on short form platforms recently. I've talked about, maybe playing Secret of the Mimic or Security Breach or something like that in honor of Horror Nights having FNAF, which we're going to talk about in Thursday's episode. We're going to talk about speculation. We're going to talk about what we might see, because that is a very gaming related topic. It's not so much business related, gaming business related, but it is very much so gaming. I am excited for that and Fallout, and that'll be a conversation that allows me to talk about one of my other special interests, which is Horror Nights, in the confines of my business. I don't really have a lot of, as I'm sitting here talking about this, I'm like, I don't really have a lot of solutions to my burnout other than simply just keep going. When I burn out, it is a level to which I cannot function and I need to just keep going. Burnout is a common thing for me, because I lose interest in things so quickly. I lost interest in being an engineer within 2 or 3 years of working as one. And that might be likely because I was never interested in it in the first place. But forced interest doesn't help either, right? I am interested in content. I am interested in gaming. I am interested in, building a life for myself that has nothing to do with people, if you will, that are out to get me. And yes, I know being online and on content, you're always going to have trolls and you're always going to have to deal with that. But that's different than, corporate CEOs lining their pockets at my expense. Because I feel like that as a drone, I take that very to heart when it comes to my clients, right? I've talked about how I would rather make money off of YouTube and Twitch and whatever other, TikTok shop where people are buying products that they actually use. I would rather make money off of commissions of products, sponsored ad reads, YouTube AdSense, Twitch ads, and help people for free than feel like my entire business is built on the backbones of people that may or may not be struggling to pay me. Yes, coaching is a service, and yes, coaches deserve to be paid fairly. But when it comes to the weight loss space, it's hard for me to say, pay me a lot of money to support my lifestyle when I've struggled with it in my past and all of the bad information out there. I took a lot of information from my family, and my family has been known to be wrapped up in MLMs like Optavia and Beachbody, and those aren't safe and good for you when it comes to weight loss. Will you see results? Yeah. Will they be long lasting? Probably not. And I don't want to live off of processed junk. And I don't say that to demonize processed foods. I say that as I try to eat as whole food minus my sodas as I can, I like a good protein bar and whatever, but if I'm choosing processed stuff, I'm gonna at least choose stuff that tastes good and doesn't cost me an arm and a leg. And that's the case with MLMs. It doesn't taste good, and it's triple the price it would be if you got a similar product at something like a GNC. So when it comes to building my business, I think part of the reason I've burnt out is because I wasn't aligned with it. I love the idea of coaching. I love the idea of being a content creator. I love the idea of my business, but I didn't love the tactics I was taught to build it. And I've never really fully been in alignment with the things that people have taught and the things that people have said. And being in alignment and being very intuitive and in tune with what I'm thinking and feeling, my witchy vibes, if you will, is something that is extremely important to me in today's day and age. It hasn't always been important, and I haven't always chased, true alignment because I was always so worried about money. But aligning and being able to afford a lifestyle I love to live is the ultimate success for me. And I feel like I burn out as much as I do because I don't have that alignment. When you are constantly fighting the things that you're doing in your everyday life, it doesn't feel good. And I'm stuck in this place right now where I want to be better. I want to be bigger. I want to be something that's not the corporate way of life. And that's not to hate on corporate jobs, because mine has got me everything I have today. It's just not for me. That's it. It sometimes isn't for everybody. I understand that a lot of people enjoy the like security it brings and the stability and the normalcy. I'm not normal, so I don't like living in normal. And I think that's part of my problem is, specifically with my ADHD, right? Not to make this about, mental things, if you will, because it's not an excuse, but specifically with my ADHD, I can use my hyperfocus as a weapon, and I can use my hyperfocus as a ultimate guru, if you will, but it is still, a symptom of my ADHD. I still will have all of this noise running around in my head telling me all of this chaos. And the only way I don't have the chaos is if I medicate. And if I medicate, I can't be a creator. And I've seen a lot of creators talk about this recently. I didn't feel I could write scripts for days, but recording, I felt like a drone if I was medicated. So I'd have to choose, and it was just a mess. And yeah, in the future, people producing me may actually hate how wild and chaotic my brain is. I've watched my husband get frustrated with it at times, but it's what makes me me, and it's what makes me a creator. It's what led me to buy the beanie on my head and do this event for 18 years, maybe even 19. I can't do math. At this point, I've been doing it a long ass fucking time. My weirdness, the Funko Pop wall, the obsession with theme parks, all of that is a part of who I am, and a part, as is the chaos, the fuckery, and not being in alignment with that and having to force myself to be this politically correct, behaved person and play the game of corporate politics has led me to being a depressed,